Welcome to Cornhole Champions. Happy Wednesday. I'm Zachary Oren Smith. The culture machine wants to make rural life seem even tempered and maybe even a little slow. Where they see pastoral agrarianism, we see industrial consolidation. Where they see noble individualism, I think we see subsidy dependence, the privatization of profits, and the nationalization of big ag's costs. Art Cullen won the Pulitzer Prize for his work drawing connections between the industries that we depend on and the ways they extract from our environment. In some ways, you can't be an Iowa journalist without being familiar with the blunt observational style Cullen has brought to writing about our environment and about ourselves. He's the editor of the Storm Lake Times Pilot, and he's got a new book with Ice Cube Press. Dear Marty, we crapped in our nest, notes from the edge of the world. It's a collection of essays that reads like a book report on a nightmare. He connects the historic development of commodity corn to the consolidation of our political power, the destruction of our water table to the disappearance of our small towns. It's not an easy read, but it's a clear-eyed one. We spoke before the book came out. Art was preparing for treatment for prostate cancer. And in the interview, I felt like he was switching between the sense of despair and possibility. There was some promise out there, something he wanted to believe in, but there was also this reality that kind of kept him tethered to a sense of pessimism. It's a feeling that I relate to, one that the kind of back and forth that I think you'll find familiar. Here's Art reading the prologue.
Prologue, October 2024. Dear Marty, boy howdy, our 50th year class reunion is coming up. The Storm Lake St. Mary's High School class of 1975. 44 of us there were. It hardly seems real or fair. We're so long in the tooth, our hearts are about to burst if cancer doesn't catch us first. Mark your calendars between doctor appointments. Worlds come and go and end again. We each went up to Minnesota for college. You wound up in the Twin Cities writing and researching on Native affairs. I meandered back to Storm Lake via a series of small-town newspaper hitches. You stood up for me at our wedding. Dolores is doing well. I'm receding from the grind. The pandemic nearly killed us. It changed me the last 5 years, which helped make the past 50 years clearer to me. Democracy was and is on thin ice. Freedom could be fleeting. You helped to keep me sane through our semi-weekly phone calls. Meantime, the planet appeared to be set on fire, literally. We talked about the way things started, how worlds begin and end, and it feels like we've been through something. We approach our place with a sense that we must conquer and exploit it, and the same goes with people. 50 years around a small town amid the teeming waves of golden corn, a lot has changed, but corn remains king, just like when we were in school. But the place we knew is gone, the world of family farms and the Saturday livestock auction. We're the poorer for it. This is how it went down, or at least how I put it down, in notes compiled over this strange time from Irving Street, just up from the lake in the small town we called home. How things turn. I hope you come home for the reunion. Love, Art.
That was Art Cullen, the editor of the Storm Lake Times Pilot, winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and the author of Dear Marty, We Crapped in Our Nest, Notes from the Edge of the World. Hello, Art.
Hi.
Thanks for beginning that way. I'm interested in this, the way you structured this book as kind of like this letter to this kind of like book of essays, this letter to Marty, your friend Marty. Who is Marty? And let's begin there. Why was this a person you were trying to that important person for you? You were trying to communicate with?
Well, Marty is Marty Case. He's an old high school buddy of mine from Storm Lake St. Mary's. And as I say, he lives up in the Twin Cities now. And he's a writer, a very good writer, and authored a book actually called The Relentless Business of Treaties for the Minnesota Historical Society, which is an excellent recount of how we screwed Native people out of their place through treaties, and how it lingers today in our culture. And so we thought about putting a book together, and uh, it didn't work out as we had hoped. But I salvaged. We wrote one sample chapter. It's kind of a long story. We wrote a sample chapter called "The Corn Gospel" together, and we had hoped that it would interest New York publishers, and it didn't. Uh,
Bummer.
Yeah, and so we have this beautiful, what I thought was a really beautiful sample chapter sitting there gathering digital dust, and Steve Semken had been bugging me about writing a book,
That's
and
Steve
I
Simkin of
was
Ice Cube Press, the publisher of this book.
yes, in North Liberty, and I was still licking my wounds from rejections in New York, and wasn't in any mood to put together a book, but I did.
It's interesting that
That's a long answer to who's Marty, but
no, it's a great answer because it kind of teased me up. So like by far, I thought the most interesting part of this book was the chapter called "The Corn Gospel." Did that originate from that original kind of collaborative pitch?
yeah, yes, that was the sample chapter that
It's
we had pitched to publishers in New York, and we got rejected, and they said rural doesn't sell, and who's your character here? And we're going, well, Iowa's the character, and huh?
Well, you do in the chapter. It's a really sweeping history, right? It's you go from kind of the origin of corn as a varietal in the Americas, and you stretch all the way through the Green Revolution and to the kind of water table discontent that we have today. I mean, I'm curious about that chapter because in some ways, right, like there's the history begins really quickly as you kind of plot the trajectory of corn development over time, but things slow down in terms of like attention to history, in terms of the innovations that you're kind of recording during that period. In the 20th century, in a big way, the wettest century on record, maybe. What was interesting to me about this was how recent some of this history was, so recent some of this damage that we've done to our environment was. You were born in 74, 72?
I was born in 1957, and
57, excuse me. You just were a kid of the 70s. That's what I'm thinking
I
of, I
graduated
guess.
from Marty and I graduated from high school in a class of 44 in 1975.
Um, During the 70s,
And by
you
the way, we just had our high school class reunion,
did Marty make
and
it?
Marty did not show up.
That piece of shit. Um, you kind of like the way the corn gospel reads to me, right, is like kind of a reminder that a lot of the damage that we've done is relatively recent, right? It's like within living memory, right? A lot of the problems that we've created for our built environment. And I'm curious about how you think. Did you feel like that? I mean, maybe you disagree, push back, but like it felt to me in some ways, right? Like I think of the kind of modern ag system as being something that's always been there, something that we've always depended on. But your chapter kind of makes me think maybe that's different. Maybe this is a newer, more novel thing, and maybe I don't know. What do you make of that?
Well, our agriculture is predicated on a petrochemical base that was developed uh, during the war in attempts to build bombs. We discovered that you could make fertilizer through anhydrous ammonia, and the Fritz Haber method. And so you see these huge tanks all over Iowa, what big white tanks full of anhydrous ammonia, and that's what supplies nitrogen to our corn. And that's fundamentally, it changed the way we approach the landscape, along with government programs that picked industrial crops like corn, wheat, rice, cotton, and institutionalized them for subsidy, um, it changed the way our economy operated from the guy with his mule and plow to this modern industrial agriculture that we know today, and it, in my view, really revolved around uh, crop genetics combined with nitrogen fertilizer, that provides these fantastic yields uh, that we see today, and it also makes us, this two crop state: corn and soybeans, hogs, and eggs. And that's, the fourth congressional district. I just described the fourth congressional district, and it's presented this modern drain out of both people and chemicals, and we have become an extractive state, a second world economy, really, uh, because we export natural resources and people and commodity crops.
That's not like a centuries old
No,
system,
it was
right?
World War II, and
Right.
then accelerated with the Eisenhower administration. Ezra Taft Benson was the one who actually came up with the phrase "we're feeding the world." That's what was a post-World War II mentality. And then it was accelerated by Earl Butz and the Nixon administration in the 1970s by uh, saying we're going to farm fence row to fence row to feed the world, and detente with China, and we started developing China as an export
Market, yeah.
customer, uh, that's what further industrialized agriculture. And so in the 1980s is essentially when the Raccoon River started to show increases in nitrate pollution, was through this industrialization, this slow industrialization of agriculture. And we kind of reached its zenith in the 1990s when hogs moved indoors and
Right.
turkeys around Storm Lake. Uh, when we moved livestock indoors, and then ownership transferred from the farmer to Wall Street.
Right. And fast forward to 2015, right? You have Des Moines suing the counties in northwestern Iowa because they're finding the water table has become so impaired by these practices. That they're, the court case, I think, the suit gets thrown out of court, right? Because the counties don't have regulatory power over these ag producers. But I think a lot of folks that listen to this show, that may be readers of yours, feel a little bit powerless, right, in the context of this history, right? And I'm curious about when you're thinking about it, having plotted out this kind of like timeline of extraction to this point. I wonder what you make of the like relative recency of some of this.
Well, first of all, regarding being powerless, there's a lot of money stacked up against clean water and clean air, and in Iowa, and Iowa is the most cultivated place on earth uh, because it has had this rich topsoil that we're shipping down the Mississippi River into the Gulf of Mexico. And we used to have feet of it. Now we have inches, depending on where you're at. So we set up a problem. And we're owned by the agrochemical industries, whether it's, the Coke fertilizer
Mm-hmm.
or Bayer or whomever. Bayer produces Roundup.
Right.
They own our political process, and that's been going on for about 50 years. The purchase of the political process, it was set out by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in the late 1960s, and Grover Norquist and that whole deal. And then the rise of the moral majority. They realized that evangelicals were the last virgin timber in America, and they politicized evangelicals and married the Catholics and evangelicals. And hence you have modern Iowa controlled by the Farm Bureau and the agrochemical industries waving a Bible at you. And that is what defines our modern era. And then, candidates like Caitlin Clark then break through that every once in a
Dre.
while. Caitlin Clark, being from Sioux City, just upset.
Caitlin Dre.
Or Caitlin Dre, excuse me, Caitlin
It's
Clark.
the other Caitlin, the other important
I'm
Caitlin
sorry.
in Iowa. You're right.
I'm a basketball nut too, so excuse me.
I think for folks outside of Iowa, that consolidation of power is hard. It's hard to understand why kind of both parties would kind of be involved in supporting its trajectory, right? And I'm curious, like, but within Iowa, right, because so much of our industry is agriculture based, so many of our towns are held up by meatpacking plants. So many of our towns are held up by some of these
And the Farm Bureau was
corporations.
organized county by county, and it's been
That's right.
there for since the 1920s.
Hugely powerful interests. That's right.
And it typically or historically had been associated with 4-H and the Iowa State Extension Service.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just permeates the state, the Farm Bureau, like no institution does any place else in the country.
In my mind, the depth of power created by ag industry feels a little insurmountable, given that, like, if you are in the state of Iowa, I have felt that it's insurmountable if you're in the state of Iowa, just because so much of our economic interest is tied up in the industry. When we talk about the way it has impaired our water system, the way it has extracted so much of the value out of our soil, some of that interest may be mismatched. I wonder, what do you make of that? Your book certainly is interested in that, like that extractive process. What do you make of it?
Ultimately, it corrodes our civic culture when you cede ownership to Wichita, Kansas, in the case of Koch Enterprises, or Delaware in the case of Bayer, which is actually a German company now. It was Monsanto. And so you cede your civic stake to these corporate outfits, corporate interlopers, and you can break through.
Mm-hmm.
You can break through that if you choose to, and that's what I'm suggesting, that Caitlin Dre just did that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not hopeless. You can break through the corporate oligopoly, and she did it by being direct and being on message and being organized. None of which the Iowa Democratic Party has been since Tom Harkin retired.
Clearly, the Caitlin Dre victory, which happened, we're talking at the end of August, so that special election's pretty close to us right now. In the previous legislative sessions, one of the big kind of stories that emerged surrounded the Ag Gag Act, right? This was an act to limit the liability a chemical manufacturer could suffer for EPA-approved chemicals. You've written quite a bit about that piece of legislation, and it is likely to return next session. I'm just curious about whether you were seeing any organization in the state to kind of push back against what is likely to be kind of a returning theme for the next legislative session.
I think that that Republicans are in Iowa are pretty skittish right now about sidling up to big corporations. There's a significant faction of the Republican Party that's very populist. And historically led by Steve King, and so that legislation failed in a lot. There's a lot of people who don't trust big chemical companies and the Rastetter crowd, and it's a source of a deep divide in the Iowa Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And so I think I would be skeptical if that legislation would survive. That's why they're trying to push it in Congress, where it might be easier to get it into the next farm bill,
Right. Well,
or
and
or just have the EPA just completely ignore enforcement. And I think, though, the political climate in Iowa is not conducive right now in this Republican-controlled legislature, and especially with Caitlin Dre's victory, I think they'd be very skeptical of pulling the covers up with Monsanto or Bayer right now.
Recently enough, the legislature did pass, or at least the House did. The House and Senate did pass the carbon pipeline. Was that sort of like omnibus legislation that the House had engineered. The one that the governor vetoed right at the last minute. And you talk about the Radstatter crowd, right? Do you want to say a little bit about kind of like how that plays in that kind of that disconnect between maybe a populist right in the state and kind of a right wing institutional voice like Reynolds under the influence of people like Radstatter?
Well, Bruce Rastetter was a big Republican contributor and very well known. And he runs this Summit Pipeline Company, and that has been a source of real conflict in Northwest Iowa, which is the heart of the Iowa Republican Party. You get up into Sioux County, and there are serious divisions about the pipeline, and certainly here in Cherokee and Buena Vista counties, very conservative areas, and it's driving a wedge into the Republican politics, and there has always been sort of a populist flavor here, whether on the Democratic side with Berkeley Bedell of Spirit Lake was a liberal populist, and Steve King certainly was a conservative populist, and Randy Feenstra is not especially popular, I don't think, among Republicans in Northwest Iowa because he's been in bed with Smithfield and which is a meat packer and big ag interests, and they don't trust him on property rights. Also notice Kim Reynolds' unpopularity among Northwest Iowa Republicans. You get up towards Sheldon and Orange City, she's not popular. They don't like her because they think she is cozying up with all the corporate interests. And there's a very strong conservative populist strain here.
Right. But it's not, I mean, it's not as simple as there's a wedge being driven in the Republican Party and Democrats can just come in and
No,
pick up folks, right? I mean, like, I don't think that's that
if you have a
simple.
D behind your name, you're in trouble.
Right. You want to talk about unpopular,
yeah,
Northwest Iowa.
outside of Sioux City, you can't win. And Caitlin Dre is the first Democratic senator west of Interstate 35 since Mike Groundstal.
And Josh Turek in Council Bluffs.
Okay, you're right. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
U.S. Senate candidate who's running. You might have heard of him.
I'm sorry.
No, all good. I'm curious to have you talk a little bit about the extent to which you say that what worked about Dre was there was mobilization, there was organization, they stayed on message. But like, if Democrat is that bad of a word in Northwest Iowa, right? Like, how many lessons should we be learning from this Dre special election?
Well, I think the lesson to me is that it's the economy, stupid, and that's it. Just don't talk about cultural issues. And she also stressed her other, it was
Education, childcare,
and then women's autonomy, and that seemed to resonate in Sioux City. It would not resonate in Sioux County.
Okay.
But in Northwest Iowa, it's about keeping the margins down, and I think the margins will be down in Northwest Iowa in the 2026 elections, because I think the base uh, is tired of the politics in Des Moines.
Say more about that. Where would someone see that in action?
Well, I was just reading some comments by a Republican Woodbury County supervisor's name escapes me.
Mark Nelson.
Mark Nelson, yes. Anyway, he was making comments about how it's all about the economy and affordability, and that the stuff coming out of Des Moines is lead weight on him, and he's talking about all the cultural issues and so on. So and you hear in Alta and Aurelia, the book ban is not popular. The city of Alta and the Alta Aurelia School District shared, and this is very, very conservative Missouri Synod Lutherans. They shared a city and school library, and now it's forcing the city of Alta to build a new library so they can divorce themselves, because you might run into catch-22 or catcher in the rye. Excuse me, a catcher in the rye in the Alta municipal library, and you wouldn't want to expose a middle school student to that. That's going to increase property taxes. They also see nursing homes closing down in Newell and Albert City and these little towns because of Medicaid reimbursement. So people are very edgy. Even conservatives are very edgy about what's going on in Des Moines. They don't like to see their nursing homes closed down.
Yeah, when the closing down and those that are still open, I mean, we just keep. It feels like every time I open up Iowa Capital Dispatch, Clark Kaufman has a new file on some atrocity that's happening in a retirement home near me.
Yeah.
It's brutal, but again, right? It's not like there's a easy cleavage for liberal organizers to latch onto there, right? I mean, it
No, it's
seems
all
more or
about,
less.
like I say, it's all about keeping the margins down so that
Hmm.
Des Moines can carry a statewide election for Democrats. If you can keep that spread down in Sioux
Hmm.
County, you might have a chance with Johnson County, Iowa City, and Polk County, Des Moines, carrying a statewide governor's race, for
Hmm.
example. And I do think that the Democrats will be aided in 2026 by a lack of enthusiasm in Northwest Iowa.
Why would there be lack of enthusiasm when Trump has had some of the most if you're judging him by what did he say on the campaign trail, what did he run on, and what did he accomplish? In some ways, right? I feel like he's been pretty good on his word in terms of mass deportations, the kind of greater use of tariffs to influence trade. You know what I mean? Like it feels like if this was the person that you wanted, if this was the lever you were going,
In
you
Iowa,
pulled
it's
back
more
then.
about Kim Reynolds than it is about Donald Trump. And
Interesting.
uh, people are sick of her.
Hmm.
And they're sick of her mean politics, I think. And again, if you look at Council Bluffs is hardly woke. But when you see that commercial by Josh Turek of him scooting his butt up steps to go knock on a door, you know, you can win.
Yeah.
And that's why he has time. He doesn't have his endorsement, but he certainly has Tom Harkin's smiling face in that ad. And that's what Caitlin Dray was doing. Thousands of volunteers
Hmm.
who were energized because they're sick of Kim Reynolds.
Yeah.
And with hard work, you can penetrate even in Sioux City and Council Bluffs, which I say are very difficult towns. Sioux City used to be more democratic, but it's always been purple. Uh,
Right.
Even when unions were strong, it was still a purple place. Uh, and but if you can keep those margins down, I think it'll help Democrats in the 2026 midterms. And I think a candidate like Rob Sand, presumably, has a chance.
I wanted to shift a little bit to cancer. It's something that Iowa Starting Line has been writing a lot about recently with our series and called The Hot Spot. By the time this interview airs, we'll be more or less kind of closing up the wound on that series. But you're someone you've been pretty public about your diagnosis with cancer. And you've been traveling quite far for treatment. I wanted to hear you talk a little bit about kind of that experience, man. What that's been like for you.
Well, yeah, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which is pretty typical. About everybody my age, I'm 68. Everybody I know has prostate cancer, or increasingly breast cancer. We have I think Northwest Iowa has the highest prostate and breast cancer rates in North America, if I'm not mistaken. And we also have the largest concentration of livestock in North America. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or not. What I've found is the diagnostic capabilities of rural healthcare are pretty good, but your treatment options are pretty limited. And so in my case, I could have gone through 28 daily radiation treatments at the Spencer Hospital, which is 38 miles away from Storm Lake. Storm Lake is a town of 12 to 15,000 people, and you can't get radiation treatment in Storm Lake because of socialized medicine that has review boards that won't allow hospitals to compete.
This is their certificate of need process.
Exactly.
What you're talking about. Yeah,
exactly. And it's all set up by so insurance companies can control everything, and control demand. It's the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
So anyway, I can go to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, thankfully, because of Medicare. I can go to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester and get a somewhat innovative treatment called cryotherapy, which will freeze the tumor and not the entire prostate. And it's a one-day outpatient procedure, and that should be able to treat my cancer. I've been on hormone therapy here locally.
Has that been effective?
It holds the cancer at bay and arrests its development. It's not spreading to my other tumors or bones. So right. I'm in pretty good shape. If you're going to have cancer, this is probably the one to have.
If you got to have cancer, you might as well get this.
And so I'm pretty optimistic about this treatment. But the Mayo Clinic is 4.5 hours away from Storm Lake, and you just can't get this done in Storm Lake or Spencer or Sioux City,
right?
And so the facilities just aren't there. And what I've found is that our our diagnostic facilities are good, but then further treatment is really limited in rural healthcare and unnecessarily so. When we're talking right now, using this technology, you would think that telemedicine would have made more progress than it has.
It does feel like a familiar story, right? You mentioned that so many of the folks your age, just feels like everyone's getting some form of prostate cancer or breast cancer, and it also feels like a really common story to just have to travel such a long way in order to receive treatment. If you grew up in the area, or maybe you came to the area for work. And you were hoping to age in the area, right? That becomes a real limiting reagent on your ability to stick around. Right. From for a lot of retirees, I mean, a 4 hour drive I mean, that's a huge drive for anyone to get to the University of Iowa or to get to Rochester or Minneapolis.
I could go to Sioux City, but it simply does not have the facilities that the University of Iowa does. And why should I be denied first-rate facilities?
To what extent do you find that that's guiding like we talk a lot about brain drain in the state. To what extent do you find that that's part of that decision making process for folks on whether to stick around?
I would move to near Rochester.
Hmm.
If I could be in Minnesota, I would gladly uh, embrace their tax structure in order to live in Minnesota because it's a much more reasonable place and the people are actually, they're nicer than they are in Iowa. And we have to get used to that idea that we're not as nice as we used to be. And there are nicer places than rural Iowa. And Minnesota isn't that far away.
Art, kind of bringing us to a close here. I wanted to get you to read the epilogue letter in the book. Can you do that for me?
Sure. Epilogue, November 2024 to March 2025. Dear Marty, I'm scared. Madmen occupy high office. We put our values in our back pocket. The American experiment might yield a Frankenstein that we can't rein back. Our system is resilient, but there's a worldwide wave washing freedom into the shoals. Immigrants are afraid, watching for the raid. Corn and soybean growers are anxious about tariffs. It could snap the tightly wound ag supply chain. Soy exports die, hogs back up, Brazil rips out the rest of the rainforest for soybeans. You get the picture. If you chase off the immigrants, who's left to serve you up a Sunday ham? Trump promises to clear immigrants out of Storm Lake. It would be devastating. Promises made, promises kept, he said the night of his victory. Lord have mercy. Maybe it won't happen. Not yet, anyhow. A teenager was in critical condition in Canada after contracting avian flu without having had contact with fowl. A man in Louisiana died. It could become another pandemic. Trump fired the avian flu workers at the National Animal Disease Center in Ames and then tried to rehire them. We try to downplay the spread because vaccines could be bad for business. Disease is attacking scale, and scale is having a hard time fending for itself. The planet is warming faster than previously forecast. Storm Lake was in a drought for about 5 years. Prices are down for now. Markets are skittish with uncertainty. You cannot know anything. A farm bill that should have been passed a year ago will get revived and gussied up to suit consolidation and capital as always. Our rivers remain toxic drains to the Gulf. I can barely have a civil conversation these days with old boys we've known forever. Politics split us apart. It saddens me. I still shoot pool with Solo, the Zen mechanic, aka Jim Robinson, our former pressman. We listen to boomer music and wonder where we went wrong. Before you dive too deep down into that hole, it's your turn to shoot. Not many shots left. It's son Tom's turn to show the boomers a combination bank. He's smarter than me. He sees angles. I worry for the civic conversation, the fabric of democracy. It's up to him to keep darning it. He has a keen eye. Early tomorrow, Brother John drives me to the University of Iowa Hospital to meet a vascular surgeon. They're about to install a mesh in my aorta before it blows out. I've put off my prostate cancer treatment. I'm startled by obituaries. We're old duffers now, dude. We saw it all change. We knew what it could be, what it should be. We know how it started in a treacherous takeover from the Iowa. And why would it end differently? It gets hard to see at twilight. You recall, everything is so familiar in Storm Lake. It's like the picture in your mind of flag football in November. More and more, the less I understand. The vision is not what it used to be. The world we know is in the rearview mirror. We could see it coming. Damn, I could have done something more. I could have said things differently. I should have. I could have stood in front of the train and shouted, "You're going the wrong direction, Casey Jones." Then I woke up. A nurse was there. Everything going to be all right. The stents are in. Thank the Lord for federally funded medical research, which is threatened on many fronts. St. Jude spirited me through this episode. The courts have been hanging tough. Judges are limiting Trump. His appeal sags. People don't think it makes much sense to fire the bird flu workers. Markets are reacting. Elections matter, and they're just ahead. I do believe that nature will prevail. I believe it can heal. New worlds can come into form if we can let it. Iowa is salvageable. We can put it on a manageable scale. We know how. We hang on. It's always been sort of that way out here, against the weather and the markets and the corporate interlopers. You hang on to an idea and a place. Our rights we will maintain. That's our motto. I still believe we can live up to it. We might witness it yet. Come home for the reunion. I miss you. Love, in a fraternal sort of way, Art.
Art, thank you for that. Before you go, this is just something that strikes me as you're reading the epilogue. Um, I feel like there's a want when in conversations with you and conversations about books like this that are very clear about the problems facing our people, facing our landscape, facing our water table. I think there's a want to find like an optimistic lilt at the end, right?
Yeah.
I feel like if you take seriously chapters like the corn gospel, it's not a happy story, right? And there's actually like not a lot of power. There are not a lot of moneyed interests that are kind of arcing us towards a cleaner water table or
No.
towards a workforce less dependent on jobs that are killing us. Is it irresponsible maybe to kind of grasp for optimism the way I think people like me want to? I think me as a reader, I desperately cling to as a resident of Iowa who wants to raise a family in Iowa. Is it irresponsible in light of what you know about the kind of interest supporting a unhealthy, deadly system?
Well, I think that Iowa as a place, as a landscape, I think we're morally obliged to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
So, other places are ecologically compromised as well, obviously.
Right.
And I think we have a moral obligation to protect it. And in the case of Iowa, I think we have a civic obligation to protect our political structure that was moderate and not left or right, but moderate. And so, yeah, I don't think it's irresponsible. I think we're obliged.
That was Art Cullen. His new book, Dear Marty, We Crapped in Our Nest, Notes from the Edge of the World. You can find it where fine books are sold. Buy it from a local shop, not from Amazon. Art, thank you so
much. IceCubePress.com. IceCubePress.com.
We don't want to support Steve Semkin. I can't have it. Not on this podcast. No, we go support this.
Pre-order the book there, and signed copies are available if you want one.
Art Cullen, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks a lot, Zach. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. That was Art Cullen reading from his book, Dear Marty, We Crapped Our Nest. Pick up a copy from a local bookstore near you or go online to IceCubePress.com to order a copy. That was a heavy conversation, one that was hard, I think, for me to hear. I think me like many of us who live here, who are raising families here, who are trying to do really good work here, it's hard to hear someone who has such a storied career have kind of such a bleak relationship with where we are at as a state. And I think there's me as a storyteller in the space, I always want to kind of find that optimistic turn. But I think you as a listener, you as a watcher, someone who's followed my work, I think I respect you enough to trust you with reality. I trust you with the difficulty of a conversation. And it's not always going to be positive. It's not always going to feel optimistic. The longer we sit with the real problems, the better we can understand them. The better we can feel the immediacy, the need for solving them. And so while it's a hard conversation, it's one that I hope you'll sit with. It's one that will sit with me for a while. And with that was another episode of Cornhole Champions. If you have questions, please send them to zach@iowastartingline.com, and be sure to include where in the state you're writing from. We're an audio medium, so send me a voice memo if you're brave. Keep it to under 90 seconds. We'd love to hear from you. While you can watch Cornhole Champions wherever you listen to podcasts, the single best place is to subscribe to our YouTube. That's youtube.com/iowastartingline. Like and subscribe to help us grow this platform. The best place to follow my work and every twist and turn of this show and my stories is my Substack newsletter. Give me a follow at cornholechampions.substack.com. We're on Instagram and TikTok with clips from this show and with videos of us thinking through the stories we're covering that day. Give us a follow. If you like the show, I think you'll like what you find there. Last, Iowa Starting Line's flagship newsletter is a tremendous resource of Iowa stories and insight. Subscribe at iowastartingline.com/newsletter. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Cornhole Champions is a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. The podcast is produced by me and edited by Rebecca Steinberg. Our music is by Avery Mossman, and our show art is from Desiree Tapia. Cornhole Champions is a proud member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. We'll see you with the new episode next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zachary Oren Smith. Thanks for listening.